Hey guys, welcome to another special episode of Humanized. We are taping a series of shows in New York City right now, and today I have with me Ike Slimster.
Hey.
So excited.
So excited.
Are you nervous?
Nervous? No. I think you brought this up at a perfect time.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about what the it is. Let me explain this to the audience.
Yeah.
So you guys know or may not know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I thought that Ike would be the perfect person to have this conversation with. You guys are going to think that's counterintuitive because Ike's a comedian. Like, what would a funny man have to do about mental health?
Yeah, he plays too much.
The jokes, right? The sad clown paradox. We're going to get into that. But before we start today's show, you guys know we like to be socially responsible. So I just want you to know, if anybody at any time, and I'm going to use this word properly, even though it's always overused, if you feel triggered, if you feel like it's too much, if we're having a conversation that makes you feel like you might need to take a time out, please do so. Because we're going to be talking about some really brave topics like, Ike, yes, please turn your phone off. Welcome to the show, Ike. And we're not cutting this part out. We're keeping it in. When we are talking about anything that has to do with suicidal ideation, mental health, depression, anxiety, some of these topics, while relatable, can cause harm if you're not ready. So if at any point you need a timeout, I'm telling you right now that you have permission to come back to this episode. This conversation is going to be very brave. And the reason why I'm saying it's going to be brave because we're not going to just be talking about mental health in general. We're going to be talking about the Black men's mental health crisis very specifically. Ike, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So the intro point for this conversation is that we both watched a show that is, at the time of this taping, #1 on Netflix in many places, called Baby Reindeer.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know about Baby Reindeer, it's a show about a comedian or a wannabe comedian who is being stalked by a crazed fan. And this fan is wild, erratic, clearly unwell, and yet he can't seem to set healthy boundaries with her because he's so damaged on the inside. Any validation, even toxic validation, feels good to him. So Ike, I asked you to watch the series before the show.
Yes, you did.
What are your thoughts about Baby Reindeer?
Where do I start? First off, at first, I think the biggest challenge is that loneliness can cause us like this weird attention addiction, right? This withdrawal.
You think loneliness causes attention addiction?
Yeah, it can because at some point you're so starved that anything would feed it, right? But as the show goes on, it starts to touch on so many other different mental issues because it doesn't just stop there.
Yeah.
He starts to like get into other things where it's kind of like...
Pause for a second. Spoiler alert.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to try to talk as general as possible because Ike and I are both...
I'm gonna keep it...
We're going to keep it as general as possible, but we are going to spoil a little bit for you.
Yeah, just a little bit. So he starts to like basically like a lot of his current pursuits are a result of his past, pain or past tribulation. So it's like if you think about like in general, everybody can see themselves in that show. That's the crazy part.
You think so?
Yes, I think there's micro moments where you can, not exact events, not the exact cause and effect, but you can attribute different,
What part of Baby Reindeer did you, because it's about a comedian, right?
Yeah.
And you're a comedian.
Yeah.
So and you have a job where no shade, no tea. You have to have a certain level of validation addiction to work in content creation.
100%.
Right? So let's be honest, guys. I have a lot of friends who are content creators. It's impossible to understand how dopamine and serotonin work and don't think that every single content creator who's making any kind of treadway doesn't have a slight addiction to validation.
Yes,
you have to. It's a hit.
You have to.
Your body naturally has to.
Yeah.
So how did you feel watching that part in particular, like the whole sad clown paradox of sometimes people who make the most jokes are the saddest?
100%. I mean, I've been to that edge. It's a very slippery slope. I've been on that edge. Like, and I know it all too well. And the crazy thing is I've also recognized in other content creator friends who've had the same, like the bug, the tick, where it's kind of like, that's what's bothering you. And we also had this insider joke where it's like, if a friend posts something and they're just like, and then you ask them, yo, how's your day going? And they're kind of like, I'm chilling or whatever, and you like, yo,
you didn't get no likes.
That video ain't working, is it?
Yeah, that reel didn't hit.
That reel ain't hit the way you thought it was gonna hit, and it's like it. And comedians also have the same bug too, where it's kind of that this the reason, but you can't share as much without sounding like a little, like a little like it just makes you seem shallow.
But pause. Like without sounding like what it really is, though. That's the funny thing is there's this feeling that we often have that if we sound like we are addicted
Yeah.
or vulnerable or weak
Yeah.
or desperate, that we don't want to seem like it. But what if you really are it though?
Because there's other
Because it's not inaccurate.
because there's other human beings who are full of it and would make you feel like this feeling that you're feeling is like sort of invalidated because they're not familiar with it or they hide theirs better. Right?
Yeah.
So they basically look at you like you weak. They might not say weak, but they're kind of like, yo, like you'll see it in comment section.
What if it really is a weakness though?
It is a weakness, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a weakness that we're all not predisposed to. It's just
Yeah.
you're not putting yourself forward to actually test that.
So it's not that the feeling is inaccurate that they're pinpointing. It's that the internalized shame is, how dare you judge me?
Right.
Which is ironic because comedians' job is to observe and judge others all the time.
Right, crazy.
So the hypocrisy of having a job that requires you to judge while being so sensitive to judgment.
But that's why the best comedians are very transparent. That's why the best comedians sort of self-deprecate, because if you can strip others and strip yourself, there's literally there's no topics off limit.
The word best is interesting. So by best, you mean the most effective to the audience? Because I think we might have different definitions of best.
The best in the sense of the person that can most concisely or precisely like convey like.
So that's effective.
Yeah, so effective.
Because here's the thing, as an EQ coach, and I always have to mention this so people understand the lens I'm speaking from. I think the best comedians are the ones who are self-deprecating, but who do not feel like a punchline.
Yeah.
I think the most effective comedians are often the ones who are the least healthy.
Yeah.
So if you look at like Richard Pryor or Robin Williams,
yeah,
they were great, but they were consumed by that greatness because they didn't have the ability to pull themselves out a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes best to the audience isn't necessarily best for the comedian.
Of course not. You're basically sharing an unhealthy amount of time with yourself. I think people don't think about that part. Like you.
Well, as a writer, trust me.
Because like it's one thing to be self-sufficient and to like be introspective, and that's good as an artist. Like you should be, but it's the amount of time you're spending is borderline, like in Baby Reindeer, is borderline stalkerish, right? Just imagine, because there are several ways in which I thought about it. Martha could also be his
Martha, by the way, is the stalker, just to set the stage for the audience.
Yeah, the stalker in the show could also be his inner ego, right?
Absolutely.
Right? Because you spend that much time with your inner ego, and it's giving you green lights, it's telling you yes, it's telling you positive affirmations. You're amazing, all these things, to the point it could get really twisted in there, because then you might not see the things that you're doing wrong because everything is right. Because
you will not.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So and at some point, the twisted part is when you start to, because it's supposed to be positive reinforcement, right? And the reinforcement is supposed to be positive. That's in its nature. That's an inherent part of
balanced reinforcement is positive, yeah.
Of course, but that's the future. That's after we've gone over the edge,
So you think that a lot of people, men, comedian in particular, because that's the lens that I really want to talk
100%.
about, have to go to the edge and fuck up to realize where the middle is.
Yes.
Interesting.
100%.
I want to double click on that for a second based on the show. There is a part of the show where the protagonist, who is deeply tortured, zero boundaries, self-indulgent, selfish as hell, but still human. Because the show's called Humanized, right?
Yeah.
So we can call a thing by its name without judging it. Like if I call somebody selfish doesn't mean you're not worthy of love. It means that you're a flawed human being who needs to work on something.
Agreed.
So he was deeply selfish and had zero boundaries and was very self-indulgent and was a slave to his ego.
Yes.
And then in the middle of that, he falls in love with a transgendered therapist.
Yeah.
Think about that. Someone who has had to be on the margins and who's learned to heal themselves and is now healing others.
Yeah.
So the epitome of what he's not is what he falls in love with.
All of it.
And she still chooses to give him a chance, despite the fact that at every turn he shows that he's not deserving of her.
Yeah.
And when he ultimately fucks it up because he's ungrateful, because indulgent people don't know how to be grateful. When he's having a moment of introspection in front of the audience, he says, "I hated myself so much more than I loved her." And I was addicted to hating myself more than I was to loving her. Yeah. Can you speak to that? Can you relate to a part where you're getting everything that you know that you want, but because you know you don't think you deserve it, you sabotage it? What does that feel like? That's the one emotion that I've never been able to relate to, even though I do this work with so many clients of mine.
I think you basically can't forgive yourself for your past.
Why?
Because it's so much darkness. I think people underestimate how much darkness, again, like I said, like as an artist, like that you have, because you share so much time with yourself creating.
Right.
So in that darkness of self-doubt, self-deprecation, self-rebuilding, right? Because every time you destroy yourself, you rebuild yourself. Just to get
Optically,
out.
maybe.
Yeah, just to get back out.
Mhm.
But even not just mentally, because you need it. You need the structure and stability to actually do logic-oriented tasks.
Yeah, but even that is facing
Yeah, it's
forward.
front-facing,
Yeah, it's
but-
optical. It's
yeah.
not necessarily internal.
But in the details, you really have to know how to tinker with it. Like you can't show up scrambled and then deliver a file to a client, and then they're gonna catch it. You know what I mean? Like you can't be
Yeah.
unstable to your client. So that's what I mean by like it can get all the way down to like the details. You know what I mean?
We'll agree to disagree on that one only because I call it the bucket versus the plumber. If you have a leak, you can make a bucket
Yeah.
to catch the leak, so
Yeah.
there's no more leak right now. But
Yeah.
that bucket's not a plumber. A plumber is
I
not.
mean, of
A
course.
plumber's not just catching the water; it's fixing the problem. So I think a lot of times, high functioning depressed people,
Yeah.
they get a bucket and mistake it for a plumber. So a client will
Of course.
respond
I mean,
well to a
you-
bucket.
but
I'm
you
talking
know-
about the plumber. Yeah.
You know about the Johann Herber thing? I mean, like it was reference. It's,
The audience always needs to know. You can
Okay,
no inside
okay,
jokes for
okay.
Humanized.
Okay, so I've explained to Blue before that the Johann Herber thing is this psychologist that basically describes subconscious as thoughts that are conflicting end up drowning in your subconscious and they reemerge later, and basically what we call trauma, right? So we know that's going to happen eventually at some point, right? But for your day-to-day tasks, you need to rebuild.
A bucket.
You
Yeah.
do- yeah, your bucket, right? I'm just the plumber.
Bucket. It's not plumber. It's a bucket.
No, plumber gonna plumb.
Therapy's a plumber. It's
Yeah,
a bucket.
plumber gonna plumb.
You're right.
Okay, so
I love that we're having this discourse though, because so many people need to hear these nuances. So I appreciate you for doing this dance with me.
of course, I love dancing.
But you
especially
were talking about the darkness though, right?
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned the darkness, because here's the thing that I always find so interesting. People don't realize that darkness is universally addictive.
Yeah.
Pain is universally sexy.
Yes.
Those who have overcome that addiction, people who are still slaves to it, act as if it's not possible to overcome, and that if you've overcome it, you must not have gone as deep down as I have. And it's the biggest fallacy that I've seen in my work. I had known people who've gone to the very floor of it and pulled themselves out. And when they talk to people who are mid-level, they're like, well, since I'm still in it, I must be darker than you. Like, no, that person went darker than you did. They just pulled themselves out. Have you ever had any conversations with self about the addiction to the darkness? Because it's not about how dark it gets, it's about the addiction to the darkness.
I have. Honestly, yeah, because it is an addiction. But I had to look at it like from a collective experience point, and I realized that
That's deflection.
no. I realized that was what supported my addiction to it. That's the best way.
So you're saying that because the collective was addicted, it gave you permission to be addictive.
Basically, like when I looked at the numbers of the collective addiction, I was like, yo, I'm not special. This is we all doing it. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we are to some.
No,
Baby
we
Reindeer-
hyper acknowledge it.
Baby Reindeer being number one
Yeah.
is your first sign. That's a very meta way to even like. It's a very dark show.
But it's the first sign of what though, Ike?
It's the first line of like, how'd I say? It's not a confession, is it? Because we're not even confessing it.
Yeah.
It's the first line of evidence
Of what?
of our addiction to darkness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what's so interesting though?
Sorry, guys. Blue loves me to state things, so she's like,
I like
of what,
him.
Ike? Of
So
what?
Ike has this thing that because he's a comedian, he doesn't finish sentences because he's used to just looking at you and you finish it yourself. And so I'm like,
okay, that's a read. That's a read.
Yeah,
That's a read.
This
You
is an
got it.
audio broadcast. They can't see your eye white.
You got it.
And so I'm just
You got
like,
it. That was a read.
people
That
who are
was a
driving
read.
to work are like, well, what do you mean? I can't see his face. So I'm just trying to help the audience. You know what's so
That's a
interesting?
read.
I get nervous when shows like, I get excited and also nervous when shows like Baby Reindeer are number one for two reasons. People get very, very proud of the acknowledgement, not of the work.
True.
No, in the words of G.I. Joe, because you know I'm an 80s baby, knowing is only half the battle. I am so tired of everybody knowing, but nobody fixing. I literally go on dates with people who talk about their trauma all the time. Not a single word about how to fix it. I have friends who talk about their pain and what happened in their childhood all the time. Not a single word about how to fix it. And it's lazy. It's self-indulgent. Constantly talking about the problem, but never even ruminating on the solution is so lazy. And I think that's the new addiction.
It is a new.
I think diagnosing instead of fixing is the new addiction. And so I get nervous when things like Baby Reindeer come out because a lot of podcasts, a lot of shows, a lot of comedians who watch this are going to talk about the pain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to hear shit about how to fix it. And that's where the actual work is. So that's lazy. You get to sound smart and pontificate while actually not doing shit.
Well, I hate
Talking about it is not impressing me at this point.
I hate
'Cause
to
everybody talks about
I
it.
hate to be anticlimactic about that, but I think we don't talk about it because
No, everybody talks about it.
I mean, I'm sorry, the solution. I think we don't talk about the solution because our universal awareness right now is painful.
It's always been painful.
Yeah, but I think it's worse, more so now than ever. Like the fact
I think it's more televised.
Yeah,
because I think slavery would like a word about it being the worst it's ever been.
I mean, no, but
shout out to our ancestors.
Yeah, but you got to get aware.
It's been worse than this.
But you got to get aware of this every now and then. Like I always do content every couple of years. Where
Look, Harriet Tubman's like, what he say?
No,
it's the worst it's ever been. Fuck AI.
No, but I say universal awareness though. Universal.
Yes.
Everybody doesn't know because I have to. Like I always tell this story every time because it's like. This was like the first childhood of like moment of wow, like that I ever experienced, which was a school trip that we made to a slave camp, an old slave plantation when I was like 13, right?
Where?
Was I 13? Yeah, I was at 13 at the time. And in Nigeria.
Right? I wanted you to say Nigeria. Again, like they don't know you the way they know me.
True.
So Ike is from Nigeria, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, Nigeria, born and raised. Got my papers.
We're going to talk about that in the next episode. The next episode will actually talk about Ike's history, so you have to come back for that one. Go ahead.
But yeah, basically, we were just kids. I mean, I don't think we really touched on, it was skimmed over in our books. I don't think we really went into what slavery was. So that was the first school trip. I forgot what the name of the place is again, but and we just didn't know what we were looking at. We thought we went to a plantation. And by definition, a plantation would be just a trip for agriculture class. Right?
Y'all didn't understand the significance of it?
We didn't know how far this went. Right?
Got it.
We thought plantation workers, in the past, this was something that
at 13.
This was something that helped the nation develop. But no, there's no reference to Black American issues or none of this.
Chattel slavery,
right?
Sold our cousins, nothing.
It skips over.
Okay.
So now we're walking around this plantation and we're looking at pictures of Black people being chased by dogs. We're looking at pictures of the torture methods. At one point, there's innocent moments like there's a barrel, right? And the barrel is supposed to be filled with water. And we ask, this is a barrel for what? It was like for drinking water. And we're like, this is really difficult. How would they drink? And this is you can imagine how horrific this is. And the guy goes, that was the point. We're supposed to battle to the death.
To get
or
the
who
water.
can get into the water.
Yeah.
And it stops being playful. We are, it's not a trip anymore. Everything becomes very real.
Something as life-sustaining as water still has to be a battle.
Because the picture's everything. So those little moments where you have to, and then you could get aware of it and you can go back into your life and you could sort of forget again because it doesn't come up in the curriculum, mind you, which is crazy, for another couple of years. Right? So you have those moments where we're getting it in spurts. You're getting doses. You're not getting full awareness, though. But you're also not going to get a big reaction if you're not getting full awareness.
And there's also this moment, too, of disassociating because your brain can tell something painful is about to happen. Let's turn it off. I actually am happy you're talking about that school trip, which it sounds horrific. I hope they stop sending. It was
crazy.
I hope whoever in the Nigerian school system was taking the kids.
But it's one of our biggest tourism.
Oh, that's
it's one of our tourism.
It's not about the tour. It's about the lack of context for the children because it was a missed opportunity.
Right.
I want to read some quick stats because I really want to. This is called Humanized, and one of the things I will say is we try as little as possible to focus on them and focus on us, like we humanize ourselves. So I want to bring this back to self and talk about some of the stats for those who are not aware about just how bad the mental health epidemic, but very specifically the Black men's mental health epidemic is. For those of you who don't know my story, I'm going to say this very quickly. The reason why I'm so passionate about Black men's mental health is not because I'm a pick-me. It's not because I don't understand that women don't need therapy too. Women constantly are socialized and allowed and championed to talk about needing therapy.
Yeah.
Black men are not. And because at the age of 12 years old, my best friend hung himself because he had nobody to talk to when I went to a different school, I carried a lot of pain as a child about not being there for him because he told me, he said, if you leave, I won't make it. And he didn't make it. So at a very young age, I understood what it meant for little boys not to have someone to talk to.
Yeah.
So for me, this is not pandering to Black men. It's the fact that in 2021, I was in a room where I was the only Black woman. It was nothing but Black men. I said to them, hey guys, I've noticed that all the guys in my life are really depressed. You guys think something's going on. And they all looked around the fire pit because we were all outside and they were like, nah, I haven't noticed anything. And then literally like a year later, the stats came out that Black men were unaliving themselves at crazy rates. I felt it in real life because of the work that I do. And then a year later, it got substantiated. So this has been in the air for a while, but it's a silent epidemic. No newscasts are really talking about it. Nobody's doing content on it. Other Black men are not talking about it. And so I almost feel compelled to bring this up. And so some of the stats say the suicide rate for Black children ages 10 to 19 has risen 60% in the last 20 years. 60%, guys.
Black children?
Black children in particular, their suicide rates has risen 60%. And in 2021, a study revealed that Black men had a larger increase in suicide attempts than any other group ever. More than women, more than other men, any group in this world, Black men have the highest skyrocketing groups. And it also found that suicide rates in Black male adolescents increased by 47% from 2013 to 2019. This is before the epidemic, guys, before the epidemic. So the attempts had gone up almost 50% before the epidemic, and then the success rates of those attempts, unfortunately, skyrocketed during the epidemic. So I need you to understand where the thing about, we made a joke about slavery earlier, about, you know, Harriet Tubman would like a word, and then you saw the story about the plantation. The thing that happens with the DNA of trauma is, first, the threat is on the outside, and then it penetrates and it's on the inside. And so by the time they give you any sense of freedom externally, they've already damaged you internally. And there's already been scientific data showing that we do carry racial trauma.
Yeah.
We literally carried in our DNA. That's why our anxiety rates are so high. It's why our hypertension rates are so high. I don't know a single person who doesn't have anxiety who's Black. I don't have a single friend who at some point has not had crippling anxiety to some degree, diagnosed or undiagnosed. And because at least women get to vent, we don't get called bitches or weak or simps when we vent. I want you to, only speaking about self, don't feel like you're compelled to talk about anybody else. How do you deal with being a Black man in a world that gives you very finite metrics about what makes you valuable in those moments where you're not meeting those metrics? Because to me, the ego death that needs to happen for Black men, like universally for them to heal, nobody's championing it, and they get clowned when they try on their own. How does it feel like, and let's be honest, guys, I'm gonna tell you how it socializes. I actually have a hard time singing songs about broke niggas. Because we're like, you know, broke the bitches to the left. Like, those songs are supposed to be fun. I can't tell you how many men I know who literally their lack of finances have caused them to completely think they're invalidated. I have a hard time hearing songs about small dicks because you know what? No, seriously, because I'm a juicy girl. I look cute. And if you call me a fat bitch, people can be like, oh my gosh, she fine. Shut up. But if we talk about a man having a small dick, suddenly body positivity, body autonomy, that goes out the window. I'm being so serious though. And some of them actually know how to use them. I'm just gonna say that least right out. So I'm just saying that like, there's so many things that we're not allowed to do.
You gotta think about the rebuttals though. They're gonna be like, but yeah, girl, but you have a small pussy. Like, you know, it's gonna be like
a small pussy is not considered a bad thing.
They're gonna be like, oh, is it wet? Is it dry? Like, you know, they're gonna rebuttal.
The fact that you're about to do a set, I'm just saying, even though patriarchy is real and misogyny is real, there are quiet ways that it is very easy to chisel away at a Black man.
Yeah.
That they're not allowed to say ouch about.
Yeah.
And so I want you to speak on behalf of Black men who have had a season of, damn, I don't measure up, but I can't say shit because I'm gonna look like a weak bitch. How does it feel in those moments? Because let's be honest, all Black men have them, even the high value ones.
Well, you know, in the words of Winston Churchill, that's the darkest hour.
Keep it to yourself. Yeah, okay. Don't be a comedian. Talk about.
All right. It is the darkest hour though, but in those moments, it's ultimately really, really dark. And
how does it feel though?
It feels isolating. It's very isolating because you. I remember all those moments, and I remember how much like I would think to myself. Now, unfortunately, sometimes when you think of a solution for yourself, you have to remember that like not everybody's gonna get to this point to think of a solution like this. But I had to find ways to ground myself in like little things. Like I had to remember like when things got so heavy, I would say at base level, I'm human, at base. And it's crazy to even think this, but like, I like comic books and I like sci-fi and I like all these things that like sort of like are very escapist if you think about it at its core. But I think comic book writers don't get enough credit because there's a lot of like lessons in them that kind of teach you how to like have contingency after you hit rock bottom. Because a lot of times those heroes fall so far down. They fall so far down that like And if you start reading that like at the age of like 7, 8, you start to build this sort of like mentality that I could, like the bottom is not that, it's not that shattering. It's not that self-destroying. You could actually build from there. If anything, come back stronger. So I had sort of like a module like to follow. Like I would just use that as a base. Now, a lot of Black men are not going to have that, unfortunately. But for me, that was one of my core things. And then
pause for a second. I want you to sit with what just happened now.
Wow.
I'm gonna have a moment with you. You ready?
Yeah.
Don't look scared.
No, go ahead.
I asked you how it felt to not feel good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was isolating, which thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the split second, you went straight to the solution space and stopped feeling it. And it went straight to the coping.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens with a lot of Black men, is they rush past the feeling and hyper focus on the coping. And here's the thing, the coping is still external.
Mm-hmm.
Those feelings didn't go away just because you figured out how to be a superhero.
No, not be a superhero.
No, but I'm being facetious. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so my thing is that, like, do you ever allow yourself time to just sit in it rather than rushing to fixing it?
Oh, yes.
And what do you do in those moments?
I read, in those moments I read about human experiences.
So you think?
Yeah,
When do you feel it though?
I'm in that moment, I pretty much feel I'm as flat as possible. I usually kind of I feel lighter. I feel excluded. I feel just a grain in the sand, just another floating being. And there's also nothing on the other side of that exclusion and that pain. There's also something very freeing about it, which is also strange. But again,
no, it's not strange because surrender absolves you a lot, right? Because when you surrender, you don't have to work at anything. Is there ever a point outside of the surrender, not having to work, which is surrender, or being hyper-focused on the optics of, I'm going to shatter the ceiling? Is there any moment where you're feeling vulnerable enough to be like, I might need some support?
Yes.
What do you do in those moments?
I don't seek support.
Yeah. And the reason why I mention that is because every time I talk to a Black man, he talks about everything but that.
Oh, support.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're in a society where
keep it to self.
No, I'm gonna keep it self. So I'm in a society where everyone's socialized to sort of shame a Black man seeking support or help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you that's nice. Not stick it to self. It's nice. It's a learning experience. I do dissociate a lot. Wow. It's crazy. I'm in a society where, everyone is socialized to sort of shame a Black man seeking support. So what happens is I would create sort of a shield or an armor around that. Because in the end, you don't want to seem like this, freeloading moocher who's not capable of carrying themselves, especially when society has already defined you as that based on people who came before or a simultaneous experience in the same timeline.
You know what's so interesting about this conversation? And I really want to thank you for having it, because I really think people are surprised. I have a lot of male and white viewers and followers. I thought as a Black woman it's going to be the hey girl hate thing. No. White folks and men be watching Humanized on the low. Most of my DMs from people are like, thank you for talking for us. I didn't know I was allowed to feel. And one of the things that I think is so interesting is two things are happening with me. As a human being, I'm completely empathizing with you because you're talking about basic human emotions that are not gendered at all. No. As a woman, I'm calling bullshit a little bit.
No.
Because what happens is a lot of Black men, their egos are focused on society, but they meet plenty of individuals who are willing to hold space for them. And their ego blames those individuals for society, and they sabotage, trample, and dishonor the individuals who prove otherwise. And that's why I say ego death is so important, because a huge ego will make you superimpose all the bullshit on a person who didn't deserve it. So what happens in those moments that I know have happened to you? I don't know a single Black man who, if he was not hypnotized, would not admit this. What happens to all those people, including women, who offer you a safe space and you don't take advantage of it? Are you willing to admit that it's your ego and not society you're socializing? Because not everybody who socialize doesn't create space.
Yes.
Because I know so many Black women who are going to be like, Blue, please call this nigga out because so many of us hold space and they trample over it while using that society bullshit as an excuse.
But of course.
Can you acknowledge that just for the audience? Yeah.
Yes, but.
Not but. You can acknowledge and then say but.
I acknowledge it. Trauma requires pattern, yes?
So does healing, yes. Everything.
Yeah, so does healing. Everything requires pattern.
It's all practice.
Series set in before you start to form an idea.
Right.
Now, can we admit that sometimes the patterns that are being observed are also not yours? Like they're not your patterns. Sometimes you just see.
No, because the way it works is 95% of the brain's function is subconscious. And sometimes once you have a pattern once or twice and you're traumatized, you are already a compromised lens. And so you superimpose patterns that you think are objective that are really still you. So
yeah.
no.
So, but if I'm an antelope and I see other antelopes get chewed by, the jaguars, like,
it's not.
Wouldn't I just know the jaguars?
The right analogy is if I'm drunk.
If I'm drunk.
Yeah, no, because when you're traumatized, it's like being drunk. You're compromised.
Yeah.
Neurologically, you're compromised.
Yeah.
So the real thing is, and this is a common misconception, a lot of people don't understand confirmation bias. And so if I'm sober and I see a pattern, sober means healed or healing, and I see a pattern, I have a reason to trust it.
Yeah.
If I'm drunk, anything I see, even a pattern, I have to question because I'm drunk. And trauma is drunk. Trauma is a compromised neurological function.
I like that metaphor.
Yeah.
I like the way you put it.
So a drunk person telling me they see a pattern?
Yeah, but we're talking about a blank slate.
No, we're not talking about blank slate. We're talking about a Black man in trauma who's trying to figure out if he's safe or not, and that's already drunk.
Yes, but where do Black men get because you said, the suicide rate is 10 to 19.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you get that self-sufficient bug? Where do you see it where you feel like? Because at 10 to 19 is pretty young.
So the answer is society creates a trauma, and individuals who are not that trauma still get seen as that trauma because your lens is compromised. And so instead of admitting that you have a compromised lens, you keep superimposing a trauma on people that's not actually real.
So can we respect the lens before the compromise?
No, here's the thing. It's not about respecting the lens. It's about taking responsibility and cleaning the lens.
Yes, but before you're assuming that this person is going to be able to clean the lens while being in the predicament.
You cannot clean the lens until you admit it is compromised.
Yes.
And people go straight to, but here's the thing, right? So
how many times?
This is what happened. Rather than talking about the lens, which is the only thing that's compromised, we instead are talking about the pattern, which is the compromised perception of the lens.
Yeah.
So my thing is, we're too far out. We're too far out because once the lens is compromised, we can't go any further because everything that it touches is already compromised.
But we're thinking about solution.
No, we're thinking about acknowledgement. You can't.
Okay.
You can't solve without acknowledging.
You can't solve without acknowledging.
Yeah.
Fine. But you see, like
I bet a lot, Rich Negates.
Okay.
I want you to take my course so bad.
What's a positive word that's not but?
And.
Okay.
That means everything before it gets to stay.
And
by the way, guys, the Humanized Own Thy Shift self-empowerment class is coming back up next month, and I'm going to offer you a free seat.
That's right, y'all.
No, I'm serious. I have so many guests.
My YouTube channel. I'm gonna be live streaming from there.
Really? No, I offer so.
Listen, you gonna plug? I'm gonna plug. Let's go.
No, there are so many Black men who have started taking my course now, and the first thing they tell me is, "My wife told me to tell you thank you," or my daughter told me to tell you thank you, or my son and I are having different conversations. So the pushback that I'm giving you isn't combative. It's that I'm gifting you the opportunity to see miscalculations that you have been riding past without anybody
I'm
else.
not saying this is not a combat. No.
No, I understand, but I'm saying
friendly fire.
It's not friendly fire.
It's friendly fire.
There's no fire, actually.
We are on the same side.
That's not friendly fire. Nobody's getting shot.
There's no war.
There's no shooting either.
You are a soldier on my team.
And shout out to all the men or people actually, because trauma is not gendered, but we're just talking about Black men today. Shout out to all the people who do not understand or never had access to therapy, counseling, etc., and who are allowed to have these moments of skipping over the gristle. Because watching me and I go through this,
this is free therapy.
I mean, it's humanized. We're gonna humanize you.
Humanize.
So my question is, and I'm gonna rephrase it. You want to say that so bad.
So bad.
I'm gonna rephrase it. Knowing now,
yeah,
because every opportunity is a chance to do something different. So forget what you were gonna say 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Knowing now that if you are drunk, that is the first thing that has to be acknowledged, not what you're perceiving as a drunk person.
Yes.
Has there ever been a moment that you can acknowledge that your lens being compromised might have stopped you from seeing a safe space where it really was?
Yes, 100%.
And as a man, do you ever feel any remorse over that, or is it just disassociation and on to the next? Like, what is the feeling around that? Because I think the women watching who want to support Black men but who are not safe with Black men, because just because you love somebody doesn't mean they're safe with you.
Yeah.
They want to know, do y'all ever really give a fuck when it wasn't me but you acted like it was? Like, how do y'all feel when you, in retrospect, recognize that you fucked up something that was clean?
And I just want to acknowledge
Go ahead.
that you said, do y'all? General. So when I say it, I'm not dissociated.
But here's the thing, right? When you talk about self, it becomes universal because all people think it's just them.
That's wild.
Being human is the most universal thing on the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Base level. Okay.
So answer the question.
Okay. I'm about to humanize real quick.
Okay. Plug.
Okay. So do we realize? Yes, we do realize, of course. But there is a point in which I think, like in any ecosystem, I think where we create the sociopaths, right? This is where they're born from, but functioning ones at that, because and then you're kind of like, do I sit with this and acknowledge it and learn from it, or is this working for my survival? Now, the sucky thing is that a lot of
survival of what? Your ego or your heart?
Society.
That's
survival
your ego.
Yeah, your ego.
Yeah.
But a lot of Black men basically look at it as it's worked so far and nothing else has. So they decide to continue and lean all the way into
And what does worked means for y'all? Keeping your pride intact? Is that
they survived. Yeah, they've kept their pride or basically they've moved up on leaning on this woman's shoulder, right? And they consistently moved up leaning on this woman's shoulder. I don't think I don't think anyone's going to be called it's survival. I think
your ego.
Yeah, but at our base, survival is what anybody's here to do. So
here's the reason why I keep interjecting is of your ego is I disagree that it's worked, and I disagree that it's survival.
Oh no! I'm not saying it's a
I'm just going to tell you why I keep interjecting because your heart and your ego are two very different things. Yeah. Your ego will make you look good to strangers and will pay your bills. Yeah. Your heart will make it all worth it when you have to go put your head down on the pillow at night. Yeah. And as someone who is around a lot of high-value Black men who have survived by your metrics, externally. Okay, wait. Let me finish. Let me land the plane. Let me finish. Okay. Who've survived externally, but who are still dying slowly inside because they didn't survive in the other way that they didn't count. I need you to.
No, because I was speaking generally. I think you're saying this is a method that I'm saying that
I'm saying the proverbial you. Okay. That's your ego. So here's the thing about the ego that's so interesting. When you call it out, it wants to speak. So I want you to listen and not defend. I'm
just trying to save my life here. This is a podcast. No. I know how these go.
Yeah, I want you to I want you to listen and not defend. Okay. Because the ego likes to interrupt, the heart likes to listen. So that's how I know which one is talking. So the beautiful thing about a man who survived via his ego is that all the rich, successful, attractive men who've survived and won via the ego are the very ones who come to me crying because their heart is congealing. And so I would ask anybody listening, not just Ike. Ike is just a brave soul who decided to sit on this couch in the hot seat. Think about survival differently, because just because your ego survived doesn't mean your heart is thriving. Yeah. And when your ego has checked off all the boxes, the emptiness you feel is the fact that your heart never came with it. And so the only part that survived is not the part that's creating people being suicidal. Yeah. The heart not surviving is why the suicide rates are so high. The heart not surviving is why successful men are still killing themselves. The heart not surviving is why people who have good partners are still ruining valid relationships. And so I don't think you guys are surviving. I think you guys just look good. Yeah. And I think what we have to do is redefine what survival actually looks like. How does it feel hearing that pushback?
Redefining what survival looks like?
Because a lot of people think surviving means that I look good, my pride is intact, and I don't feel like a weak man.
Yeah, but
are you having intimate, thriving relationships where your ego's not so fragile where you can't take feedback without feeling like your entire manhood is being compromised?
That's understandable.
You know what I mean? A supple man is so much better than a strong man. Because a supple man is like leather. You know how leather...
Yeah, I would say now, that wasn't the case for the Spartans.
Okay, but we live now. I'm going to ask you a question now before we wrap up, right? Because one of the things I love about this conversation is, number one, I love that I hope you felt safe.
I feel safe, but that last part, I just want to reiterate. You asked me for an example.
The ego like a word. Go hit it.
Yeah, the ego like a word. Blue asked me for an example of it. Why do men do the survival tactic, right? Who then lean towards the sociopath method. And that was one example.
I didn't say
give
anything
the other
about
example.
sociopaths.
No, I said sociopath.
Okay.
I said that's sociopathic. But I said I only gave one example. I'm just clarify.
I'm going to create space for your heart and your ego to confer and give another path of survival. If you and yes.
There are some which I think end up on the isolation and suicidal aisle who turn inward and don't want to end up on that pile of the sociopaths. And sometimes it can get really dark trying to do that, but ultimately either their demise or their going complete mute. So that's the other side of the fence that I was gonna.
I think it's the same thing. It just looks different.
Yeah, it's something that looks different, but one is braver and comes forward. And unfortunately,
one is optically more admirable. I think it's the same thing on the
because sociopathically it's like you can form an armor because that person is not going to be the person that they really are, right? But the other people don't have an armor so much. They kind of basically go inward. You
want to know a secret? Extremes are the same thing. They're mirrors.
I know.
So the only thing that's opposite from extremes is the balance.
That's the dots and the yin.
So anything exactly. So anything that's not balanced is literally just a copy and paste. Agreed. An extreme liberal, an extreme conservative, same person. They sound exactly alike.
Same brain pathway.
It's like Mad Libs. So my question is, you've mentioned armor a lot. Mm-hmm. What would it take for you? And you can only speak for yourself because you can't speak for all Black men, even though when something is personal, it becomes deeply universal. By the way, guys, I didn't make that up. I went to a director's workshop and I had a production company. And someone who worked at Netflix said, the best writing is when you write something deeply personal, because the more personal it becomes, the more universal it is. Yeah. Because we all think everything is personal and it's very universal. Yeah. As a comedian, when you talk about little moments that we all think are just us, it's the biggest laugh. I thought I was the only person who had to replay the same scene 20 times because I was on my phone. We always think things that are deeply personal are just us and it's universal. So being deeply personal, what would it sincerely take for you to let that armor down?
What would it take to let that armor down? I think...
And think about it and feel your way through it, not think your way through it.
Yeah, I think to let that armor down for a lot of Black men.
For you.
Oh, for me. I think it would be feeling that help or any sort of support was sincerely that and didn't have a caveat or some sort of cliff note to it. I think that's...
Do you trust yourself to actually discern that though? We just talked about confirmation bias and how if you're determined to see a bad guy, you can always find one.
You mean like Donnie and Martha?
Yeah. Back to Baby Reindeer.
Back to Baby Reindeer. Uh-huh. But I do trust myself to discern that.
Why? What have you done to earn that trust? And the reason, guys, you guys who know me in the show, I hate the term trust your gut because most people's guts are full of shit. A lot of people need an enema before they can trust their gut, and so I get nervous when people say they trust themselves because my whole thing is why? Why do you trust yourself?
I don't trust myself. I think generally,
you don't.
No, I think I don't. I really don't. I just feel like the laws of the universe is what I trust, and because of that, it's made me sort of a little paranoid because I know the universe works in some sort of exchange.
But you're the one perceiving the universe. So if you don't trust it, you can't trust what you're perceiving then.
Right. And I think that's really what the problem is. I think my trust issues would not allow me allow support if I'm...
So what you're saying is because you recognize that because the lens is compromised, you can't even discern when it's safe.
Yeah.
And that is human. Ike, back.
Okay.
It's very human.
Yeah.
And honestly, what we just did right now is had a very lightweight unpacking of why therapy is so important.
Yeah.
And there's a free resource. A lot of people say, Ike joked one time that I was like, Ike, why do you always make fun of therapy? He's like, because I can't afford it. I was like,
yeah, because
I was like, why are you talking about therapy? Because I can't afford it.
It's crazy because if a nigga goes in, sorry, can I say?
We've been saying it a couple things. Hit it.
Yeah, okay, because if a nigga goes in there about money issues, and she about to charge me, so
there's this research called Therapy for Black Men, and what we're gonna do is before this episode,
are they the best therapists though? Because every time the Black community gets something,
no.
I want no EBT therapist.
Well, here's the best. Here's the thing about therapy. Therapy is like dating. The word therapy is neutral.
Okay.
So there's gonna be good therapists, compatible therapists, incompatible therapists. Okay. You have to date to find the right therapist. So the word is neutral.
Ooh, can I be polytherapist?
I mean, your brain will probably start crying. But yeah, no, like the way this works is, and I tell people this all the time, half my clients are therapists. Not all therapists are good. Let's be freaking honest. So what happens to a lot of Black people is they go to a therapist who's incompatible and they judge the entire craft on that one person. It's like saying I'm never gonna date again because I hoe from 95. That's not how this works.
We are traumatic. We are a traumatic group.
We're traumatized.
Traumatized.
We're deeply traumatized. It's called post-racial PTSD. It's a real term, guys.
It's a lot.
Here's the thing, though. And now what? And I think the thing that I want to challenge every person, Black men in particular, to know is, number one, it's untrue that you are not loved. It's untrue. And guys, you know it. I think it's so intellectually dishonest when I see things like a Black man who can't provide is not loved. The statistics would hate to tell you differently, because Black women actually make more than Black men. And you guys, you all know that if you fine enough, cute enough, tall enough, young enough, there's a dummy with a paycheck who's going to love you through your bullshit.
That's a lot of...
Let me finish. All men know they can find a woman who is too good for them who will still take their shit.
Fine enough, cute enough is crazy. Like, not every man is...
Your ego keeps wanting to interrupt. Let me finish.
No, I'm trying to help the nigga. No. Not fine enough. Like,
can I get a second?
Yeah.
There's some medium ugly niggas who are still finding people. So let's be honest. It's a lie that you all think that you're not good enough, because you all know someone who, because of the numbers, not me, you get left by me, but you know other bitches who, because of the numbers, will let you play in their face because there's a disparity in how many Black men they are. So it's a lie that Black men have to provide to be loved, because statistically you guys wouldn't survive if that was true. It's physically, you like numbers? It's physically impossible for Black men to survive if women who are above their pay grade were not supporting them. So that's a fucking lie.
No, 100%.
Second lie, let me finish.
Yeah.
Second lie is, the thing about men are logical, women are emotional. Big cap. Those are stats that were created by white men. Most crimes of passion, 90% of crimes of passion are done by men. That's really fucking emotional, right? Mm-hmm. Black men, quickest group committing suicide, deeply emotional. Black men socialize not to talk about racial trauma and masculinity and how it hurts them. Super fucking emotional. So I need you guys to stop saying that men are logical and women are emotional. Men are socialized to hide their emotions. Women are socialized to hyper-focus on their emotions. And therefore, it gives a false perception that one is logical and one is emotional. I don't give a fuck about the mitochondria, because you know why? Let me explain to you how the brain works real quick.
Explain to me how the brain works.
Let me explain to you how the brain
Settle
works
into
real quick,
it.
right?
Okay.
Post-racial trauma, any kind of trauma that comes from what happens to the Black community, it affects the hippocampus, because I actually did go to school for this shit, guys.
That's right.
The hippocampus is what creates the ability to have that lens. That's what the hippocampus is, right?
Yes.
The hippocampus is what creates your ability to feel things and see them properly. Guess what happens when you're traumatized for years and decades and centuries?
Well,
Your cortisol levels skyrocket. The stress hormone skyrockets. And guess what it does? It eats away at your hippocampus. The part of the brain that is literally supposed to help you be rational and logical, Black men have brain damage from stress. It's compromised. When they were saying, the brain says men are more logical, they weren't looking at niggas. Okay? I promise you they were not looking at niggas.
No, they probably weren't.
So a bunch of people with brain damage who are told they're not allowed to cry are talking to people like me who have gotten healed and saying, but I'm the logical one.
But with one...
Big cap, y'all. Y'all have feelings, please fucking admit it. Because you have to admit it to fix it.
The part of your brains that actually processes emotions is a lot bigger than ours.
That's fine. And that's wonderful. But society has made the disparity much bigger than it needed to be.
Right. But you know, the society's never going to use actual definitive terms.
Because we only use testing for this. We know.
Because I think men are more emotionally charged, yes, in one direction, but women are more unilaterally emotional.
I think that because women have all these hormones, we have access. This is the thing between having access and how it's utilized. We have the raw materials. But how you use the materials matters. If you and I both go to Whole Foods and buy the same ingredients, we could make two completely different pasta dishes.
100%.
So we keep focusing on the raw materials, which is theory, rather than application in real life data about what's happening to our fucking community.
And that is why I commend you, Blue, because you're on the front line.
You know what? Don't
mental
do that.
progress right now. Because how many years? How many years?
Data
we've been free?
is not
how many years?
Black men.
But how many years we've been free? How many years?
15 minutes.
How many years we've been free?
Comparatively speaking, we've been free for 15 minutes.
Thank you, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So like, if we don't start talking about mental progress, like you are right there with the spear You are Chaka Zulu on the front side right now. You are.
I need you guys to understand what's happening right now. There's a thing called freeze and freeze or flight.
Yeah.
There's also a thing called fawn. He is fawning because he's like, this bitch gonna run circles around me.
No, this is not funny.
She's amazing.
No, this is not funny. I'm
All
saying.
the men in the room are like, bitch, you got it. You got it.
What I'm
She's
saying
like, this motherfucker got stabbed.
What I'm saying is, can we get the progress?
That's the hippocampus. Wolf was like, oh, I'm tapping out. This bitch did research.
What I was gonna say is, if you got it, right? The progress can be made.
It can be made.
We are focusing.
But first, you cannot. Here's my thing. You cannot fix a problem or an issue that you won't even admit happened. A lot of men won't even admit it hurts. You can't heal until you admit it hurts. And I'm hoping, if nothing else, this episode convinces every man, particularly black men, because those are the ones I fuck with heavy. I want every man who was watching this to, if nothing else, give himself permission to stop fucking lying and just admit it hurts. Because the stats are talking about the ones who are acting on their pain. Many more of you are feeling the pain and just high functioning.
So wait, how do we deal with the other? This is probably going to cause a part 2. There's also another issue where they're talking about how black men who are going to therapy are still committing suicide at a high rate.
So what's happening is a lot of black men, they're going to therapy with their egos, not with their hearts, and they're using what they're learning in therapy to weaponize better ways to be manipulative, and that's the wrong intention. So again, we talked about the materials and the tools, right? It's an ego death that has to happen. Going to therapy doesn't mean shit if you're not open to an ego death. Because going to therapy with an open heart is very different than going to therapy trying to find the words so you can fight better with your girlfriend when she has you chin check.
Are you talking about Clay on Love is Blind?
No, I'm talking about a lot of men.
But
Clay on Love is Blind is a perfect example.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The ego death that has to happen, that's the baseline. Yeah. Therapy doesn't mean shit without an ego death. A relationship doesn't mean shit without an ego death. Yeah. Your dream girl, the person that you've been jacking off to thinking about since you were 14 years old, could show up right now. You're going to fuck it up without an ego death.
I mean, it was jacking off, not mental masturbation. I don't think it was.
You guys don't understand how much of what you're aroused by comes by filling the void in your hearts. Let's be real clear. I'm real clear why so many men with mommy issues like the fact that I have big titties. I'm very clear about that. A lot of our sexuality is tied to the parts of us that we don't want to heal in other places.
But generally, we like the idea of things defying gravity. That's why we watch soccer and basketball.
You know what?
Ike
is back. Ike is back to tell the jokes.
No, we are discussing real theories, y'all. You know,
we're discussing real life. But
catch me at Joe Rogan. I'm gonna take this to Joe Rogan.
He's like, Joe Rogan will eat my bullshit. This bitch done read too much. Too much reading.
That's not what I said.
Never let y'all learn how to read.
Yo, stop! Don't club Shay me. That's not.
I know. So what you think, Ike?
Yeah, skip. Listen here, skip.
No, the beautiful thing about, and we're using humor. Oh, it's hot in here. The beautiful thing about.
We started laughing.
I know. We started laughing. Yeah. Like too many black people in the room laughing. It's getting warm. I love this episode because I need you guys to understand that a woman can love you, be safe, and still challenge your bullshit. Because the thing is, the more traumatized you are, the more full of shit you are.
And I just want to say, I hope she's smart enough to, because it only works that way.
If she's smart. So if you're dumb, don't try this.
Don't try this, because then I'm going to realize, and then we're going to be at a stalemate. This is going to be weird.
Like, oh man, I trusted the dumb bitch.
Right. And then I got to be like, yo, Blue wanted me to do better. Oh my God.
Okay, guys, this has been, I hope that you guys laughed, maybe felt something, maybe called yourself out in your bullshit a little bit. I will say this. I have 2 questions that I love with my clients. Is question number 1 is, what are you pretending not to know? And question number 2 is, how full of shit are you? And here's the thing. If you have never asked yourself question number 2, you're probably very full of shit. Every human being is full of shit to some degree. It's just a matter of how often do you take out the trash. So if you have not asked yourself lately, am I full of shit? You most definitely are full of shit. And give yourself permission to admit when you're full of shit. I chin check myself all the time on being full of shit, which is why I don't act like it. Yeah. I'm like, ooh, I'm about to lie to this nigga because I know I could win this argument, but I don't really mean that, so I'm not going to say it. I'm constantly having to make sure I'm not weaponizing the things that I know. I think Cat Williams once said, it takes a lot to be confident without being delusional. I think a lot of people do not know how to do that. Yeah. I think a lot of people, because their pride and their ego is speaking for them and their heart's not listening, they are delusional, but because it's working in your way, it worked, right? They survived. The ego survived. Yeah. They're like, oh, there's no problem. Until they try to have an intimate bond with someone. They're like, oh, shit, I actually have to connect with the part of my body I haven't used. So cheat code, guys, if you want to know the difference between your heart and your ego, the ego's only job is to protect what is weakened. When you feel like shit, that's your ego. Oh, nah, I'm him. I'm gonna just put on a nice outfit and get my beard waxed and get a haircut. That's all ego. The ego is all externally focused. It's meant to make you feel good even when you don't feel good.
Who's getting the beard wax? I know that was a it's a very different tangent. Okay.
I know somebody. The heart's only function is to connect when it is safe. The heart only wants to connect when it is safe. That's why people who are heart-centered would leave you. If you have a good woman and she sticks around for your bullshit, that's not her heart, that's her ego. So sis, I'm talking to you too. A lot of women think they stick around because they have big hearts. No, they have huge egos that say, I can save him. I'm special. My love, my vagina, my everything is special. I can save him. Bitch, no, you are a person.
Or they're like 3 kids in.
That's still ego because you're attached, right? I don't want to look stupid that I invested 3 kids into this nigga and he's still not shit.
Yes,
that's your ego. Your heart, though, is saying, I'm only going to connect when it's safe. And when it's not safe, I'm going to leave. So you guys, that's the cheat code. If you are sticking around when it's not safe, that's your ego. That's not your heart. Stop clapping for yourself. Ike, do you have anything you want to say before we wrap up this episode?
The question that you asked, you went over it.
Go for it.
Yeah, what was the question?
I don't remember a question.
It was something, it was like, I usually like to ask, what is the thing that you know that you pretend you don't?
What are you pretending not to know?
Pretending not to know and being full of shit.
Are you full of shit? Yeah.
Okay, so what am I pretending not to know? I pretend not to know that I know more than I present that I know.
I think you do something called weaponized incompetence.
Yeah.
You play stupid so that you don't have to have the responsibility of knowing what you already know.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's actually more work than healing. That's the gag. I'm lazy. That's why I'm healed.
I think we can all be stupid together. You know,
that's work.
It's a jolly world.
That's work.
Stupid.
It's tourist season. Everybody take a nap. Just tell the truth and take a nap. Seriously.
And get a good meal. And get a meal.
I love being zen because I get to be lazy. There's no storylines to keep up with. There's no lies. I don't have to tell. Everything's one version.
I just want to reiterate that Hitler was a tourist. So he took a lot of naps, but a lot of shit was going down in the background.
So was Shakespeare. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, a lot of shit went on during their naps.
You don't want me to read off the Leo list. It might get ugly, friend.
Whoa. Who's a Leo?
It might get ugly. Let's not play this game.
Okay.
I have a list too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
People be killing with a chopper.
Who's a genocidal maniac?
Huh?
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
I am very full of shit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But
because you're still full of shit. So and means and.
Okay. I'm full of shit.
and
I'm taking care of the plumbing. Okay. You get it?
Oh, you're gonna go to therapy.
Okay. That's not how I'm taking care of it.
No, that's the only way, babe.
Is that the only way?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have to date so many therapists. It costs so much money.
Why do you have to date so many therapists? Just try one.
I know they're gonna fail.
The ego has spoken again. All right, guys. We're going to call this episode Ego Death featuring Ike Slimster. Ike, how did it feel to do your first episode of Humanized with me?
This was amazing.
No, how did you really feel? Tell the truth.
No, this was amazing. Actually, I think this would be my first official podcast.
Really?
I hope I'm not embarrassing any other podcasts I've been on before.
I'm the only one here. Remember, that's what counts. Okay. In the words of Maya Angelou, people don't remember what you said.
It's not. I was wrong.
No, I don't care. In the words of Maya Angelou, it's not what you said. It's not what you did. It's how people walked away feeling after they fucked with you. So I'm the first that mattered. Okay.
It is not what.
It's not because I've seen you on other podcasts, nigga.
That's the crazy part. Okay. Oh my God. I said it and I was like, oh man.
I'm blue-centric as always. Please remember that we're all just human beings doing human shit. This is at Ike Slimster. Please follow him. He is amazing. He's actually going to be in a couple other episodes. If you guys are watching this, we're actually taping this out of order. You know, we're very meta here. The first episode you saw Ike was the birthday episode. By then, they've already seen you get tipsy with us with non-alcoholic shots.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a fun episode. You already saw that before. If you haven't, go back and watch last week's episode. And Ike's coming back next week. I know it's a three-peat. Damn, it's almost like you live here. All right, I know. Being in New York is interesting.
Listen, this is nice decor. I'll do it.
Look, I'm saying Humanized is a great show, Ike. We hope to have you back. Actually, we know you're going to come back, so why am I saying that?
Like, what do you...
And where can they find you, Ike?
Ike Slimster everything. Ike Slimster, do not be confused. I am an artist, and I make music, and I do fashion, and all of the above.
And we're going to get into that in the next episode.
And I'm a comedian as well. So when you see all the things, yes, I am one person. Yes, I am doing all of that. Yes, it's a trauma response.
All right. Until next time, love you guys. Bye.
Bye. That was fun.
I'm good.
Wow. Yeah. Usually because,